Welcome to some Miami Heat talk. And some noise was finally made on the Heat's end for free agency, whether you see it as good, sad, or bad. And it was Duncan Robinson. Duncan Robinson has agreed to sign a 3-year, $48 million deal with the Detroit Pistons. In return, it is a signing trade, so in return, the Miami Heat do bring in Simone Fontecchio, similar play style to Duncan Robinson. He's a 6'7" guard who just goes in and shoots the ball. He's not in the rotation as much compared to the Heat's rotation with Duncan Robinson. But similar to Duncan Robinson, he's a better defender than Duncan. I don't know if he's a better shooter. I don't know much about him. I just know he came in one game against the Miami Heat and gave us absolute buckets from three. And I know he's a shooter, but I just know he doesn't play that much also. And he's making $8 million. But, I mean, I thought the Miami Heat would re-sign Duncan Robinson, honestly, because of their patterns in re-signing these players that, had breakout seasons and, no one knew about him, and they worked their way up to be a pretty decent role player in the NBA through the Miami Heat's culture and their organization and yada, yada, yada. So I thought the Miami Heat would go ahead and sign Duncan Robinson. But they ended up not. They ended up not signing him, going for a sign and trade, which you could say was expected. I mean, I guess I didn't take into account enough the rotation that he was given, or the minutes he was given through towards the end of the season, and being in and out of the rotation in Spo jail. He was in the rotation. He was a starter. Then he's not getting any minutes in games. It didn't make sense. So I know why they left for Duncan Robinson. And also, they didn't want to commit to him long term. A bad defender. And he's a great shooter. Great shooter. But the Miami Heat are trying to get younger. Duncan Robinson's 30-something years old. And the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Heat are trying to get younger and are just completely going the young route, as we see with Kasper Siakachonis, Jovic Ware. They didn't want to trade Jovic Ware, Highsmith, Jaquez. They're going completely young, and Duncan Robinson does not fit that timeline, I guess you could say, or does not fit that plan, especially if they're going young. It doesn't make sense to give him 3 years, $48 million, if they were even going to give him that. And the Pistons were willing to give him that, $16 million a year. Good for Duncan Robinson. Good for Duncan Robinson. Truly great story. Undrafted guy, came in all of a sudden. I remember when he started really getting minutes, it was weird. Who's this Duncan Robinson dude? But truly started coming into the games, got buckets, showed he's a sniper from three. He helped us in that 2020 season where we went to the finals, and then and then became an essential piece in the rotation. And then he started finding himself in and out because of his defense struggles. But he ended up getting himself paid, and he's a true example of what the Heat organization does for some of these undrafted guys. People like to make fun of Heat culture, but this is what it's all about. Getting these guys from the ground up no one's heard about and making them into good NBA players and showing the NBA there's talent in undrafted dudes and do not give up on them. And they ended up giving contracts, and that's why I always say people should go to the Heat, and people like Gabe Vincent try to stay with the Heat. But Duncan Robinson got paid. Well, that's good for him. And I would say we'd probably be able to keep him if we didn't have Terry Rozier under contract, even though this was 3 years. Terry Rozier's up after this season, but terrible contract management by the Heat, trying to take it on that Terry Rozier. Just terrible trade. Looking back on, but here I'm gonna give you some of the stats here. 11 points per game, Duncan Robinson. What was his 3-point? I forgot. Up 39.3%. And Simone Fontecchio, on the other hand, 33% from the three last season. They both played 74 to 75 games, but Simone Fontecchio, compared to Duncan Robinson averaged 25 minutes a game. Simon only averaged 16 and 5.9 points per game. He's not a guy that we expect to make any sort of difference in the Miami Heat. Duncan Robinson would make a difference coming off the bench. Simon ain't doing nothing. Ain't no difference being made with Fontecchio. And Duncan Robinson was helped, and Duncan Robinson found a fortunate situation. He opted out of his early termination option. He exercised it, you could say. I think that's what you could say. And he knew he was going to get paid, whether it was from the Heat or not. He knew he was going to get a longer-term deal. And if you didn't know you were going to get a longer-term deal, you wouldn't opt out and go to free agency. So he knew he was going to get a longer-term deal. I thought it was going to be with the Heat, but he found himself a fortunate situation with the Pistons with the ongoing Malik Beasley situation. Malik Beasley got himself caught in some Terry Rozier type situation with gambling, and they don't have their shooter. They don't have their shooting guard, their shooter, and Duncan Robinson's going to get a good amount of playing time on the Detroit Pistons. Well, I'm pretty sure it's going to be coming off the bench, but he's going to get a pretty decent amount of playing time. Or maybe he'll get the starting shooting guard. I don't know the Pit. I'm not familiar. I don't know if Cade plays shooting guard or point guard. Whatever. It's the Pistons. Cade's a bucket. Duncan Robinson will get you them threes. That's about it, and it's going to be tough because Duncan Robinson was Bam's best passer, he was the best player that complimented Bam Adebayo with those pick and rolls, passing the Bam, throwing lobs to Bam off the pick and roll. He's just the best player next to Bam that we have because nobody seems to know how to play with Bam next to Bam in the lineup for the Miami Heat. So that's going to be interesting to see that gone now. But yeah, also here's the cap situation. NBA cap's confusing, so I'm gonna give you the Barry Jackson tweet. Okay, so here's the benefit of Duncan deal from roster standpoint. Even though they took on Fontecchio's salary of $8 million, they have $6 million of wiggle room under the tax, which gives them flexibility to take in more money than they send out in a trade or sign buyout guy next season. If they had paid Duncan $9.9 million to not play for them and signed a replacement at minimum, they would have had less than $2 million, reducing their flexibility. So I see the reasoning. There's Barry Jackson talking about the cap space. So yeah, we do have a little bit more cap space than we would have with Duncan Robinson in a sign and trade, despite taking on Fontecchio's contract. So Fontecchio can also be used as an asset for, I think, a sign and trade or just for a trade in general for another player. So you never know what the Miami Heat are looking for there, looking to do with Fontecchio, if he's even going to be on the roster to start the season. But yeah, that's it. Duncan Robinson, the end of an era, end of the power of friendship era. The role guys, the undrafted guys, the dog guys, Strus, Vincent, Robinson. I don't even remember who else is there. Caleb Martin. If you want to go back to the days, Tyler Johnson. All those guys have gotten paid and are now no longer on the Miami Heat. And with the trade also, I'd much rather have gotten some second round picks in return for Duncan Robinson if that was possible, but I don't know how the money would work for the Pistons. I'd much rather have got some second round picks because apparently those are valuable nowadays, with Durant being involved with 5 second round picks and everybody second round picks getting shipped around. I didn't know those were valuable. I'd much rather have got some second round picks, but whatever. We'll see what Fontecchio has to do. I'll do some more digging into Fontecchio's game. I'm not familiar with his game. I just know he's a better defender and he's similar height and just comes in and shoots threes. That's it. Other than that, we got nothing else for the Miami Heat except Dame Time video dropping soon. Maybe we get some Dame Time back in Miami. Not back in Miami. Maybe we get the news going for Dame Time to come to Miami again. There we go.